Laughter erupted across the ballroom. "She doesn't belong here," a voice sneered, sharp enough to cut through the music. Heads turned, eyes narrowed, and whispers spread like wildfire. At the center stood a black woman in a simple, elegant dress, unfazed, yet surrounded by smirks from a powerful white billionaire family who treated her like an intruder in their golden world. What they didn't know was that in less than 10 minutes, she would hold the power to erase $1 billion from their empire, and she wouldn't hesitate. Have you ever been underestimated by people who had no idea who you really were? Tell us in the comments. Her name was Maya Johnson. She wasn't just another face in the crowd, though that's exactly how people tried to make her feel. On the surface, she looked like any other guest at that glittering charity gala. Calm, graceful, polite. But behind her soft smile was a woman who had fought her way up from nothing. Born in a working-class neighborhood, raised by a single mother who worked double shifts to keep food on the table, Maya had built her life brick by brick. She studied harder than anyone else, often staying up until dawn with textbooks stacked high on the kitchen table. Years later, she graduated top of her class, not just with degrees, but with determination that few could match. That determination carried her into the world of business, where she became a strategist known for turning failing companies into thriving giants. She didn't just climb the ladder, she built her own. And at the top of it, she stood as the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the country. So why was she at this party? It wasn't just to mingle under chandeliers or sip champagne from crystal glasses. This night was about something much bigger. She was finalizing a billion-dollar merger with the Callaway family, an old-money dynasty whose wealth and arrogance stretched across decades. To them, this deal was just another transaction. To Maya, it was a chance to prove that power didn't always come with a familiar last name or pale skin. But here's the thing about rooms built on wealth and privilege. People often mistake humility for weakness. They looked at Maya's skin, her roots, and her quiet confidence and assumed she didn't belong. They had no idea that the woman they dismissed as ordinary was the one holding the pen that would decide their future. And when the night took a cruel turn, the truth would hit them harder than they could ever imagine. If you were Maya, standing in a room where every glance feels like a judgment, what would you do? Before we continue, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. The night had started smoothly enough, at least on the surface. The Callaway family was known for their grand displays, and tonight was no different. Chandeliers glittered like frozen stars, violins played softly in the corner, and servers floated through the crowd carrying trays of champagne. But beneath the luxury was a coldness that wrapped itself around Maya the moment she walked in. Eyes followed her, not curious, not kind, judging, measuring. At first, she ignored it. She reminded herself of why she was there, the deal. The contract waiting in her briefcase would change everything. But soon, the whispers grew sharper. One of the Callaway daughters, dressed in diamonds that sparkled like armor, let out a laugh that carried across the room. "I didn't realize the guest list included charity cases," she said, her voice dripping with amusement. People chuckled nervously, pretending not to hear, but their eyes flicked toward Maya. Maya's chest tightened, but she didn't flinch. Years of resilience had taught her the power of silence. Still, the humiliation stung. She thought back to her mother's words, "Never let them see you bend," and held her head higher. As the evening went on, the insults turned bolder. A Callaway son leaned in close, as if inspecting a painting he didn't value. "Interesting choice," he said, pointing at her dress. The people around him laughed, their laughter sharp and deliberate, like knives thrown for sport. It wasn't just about the dress. It was about who she was and who they thought she wasn't. A black woman in a world where they believed only power and privilege mattered. But what they didn't know was that Maya had come prepared for this exact moment. She slipped away from the crowd, making her way toward the balcony. The city skyline stretched endlessly, lights flickering like a million unspoken promises. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Inside that ballroom, they saw her as small. Out here, she remembered she was anything but. When she returned, the family was gathered at the center of the room, basking in attention. They spoke loudly, bragging about their wealth, their influence, their legacy. One of them caught sight of her and smirked. "Ah, there she is," he announced, raising his glass. "Our future partner, if she can keep up with us." The laughter that followed wasn't playful. It was cruel. The crowd's gaze shifted again, waiting to see how Maya would react. This was the test. Would she shrink under their arrogance? Or would she remind them of exactly who held the power tonight? What they didn't realize was that every second of their mockery was digging a deeper hole for them. Because in her bag was a document, one signature away from sealing their billion-dollar fate. And Maya was about to decide whether they deserved it at all. The room quieted as the Calloway patriarch raised his glass for a toast. His voice carried the weight of entitlement, smooth and commanding, practiced from decades of being listened to. To legacy, he declared, and to partnerships that elevate our family's empire. His eyes flicked toward Maya, but there was no warmth in them, only mockery hidden behind a smile. Maya felt every stare. Her pulse quickened, but not from fear, from clarity. She had given them the chance to treat her as an equal, to recognize her worth. Instead, they had laughed, insulted, and humiliated. And now they were about to discover the cost. She stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor, each sound sharp in the silence. She placed her briefcase on the polished table, unlocked it, and pulled out the contract. Pages thick with numbers, signatures, and legal weight, the billion-dollar deal they assumed was already theirs. The eldest son smirked. "Finally, let's make this official." But Maya didn't hand it over. Instead, she looked at each of them in turn, her voice steady and clear. "Partnerships," she said, "are built on respect." The words hung heavy in the air, slicing through the smugness like glass breaking. A ripple went through the crowd. Whispers rose. The Calloways shifted uncomfortably, but it was too late. Maya slid the contract back into her briefcase and snapped it shut with finality. "You don't deserve this deal," she said, quietly, but with the force of a hammer. Gasps echoed around the room. The Calloways' faces drained of color. $1 billion, gone in an instant. Not because of numbers on a page, but because of the arrogance that blinded them. The silence was suffocating. The family who had mocked her just minutes ago now stood powerless, watching the empire they thought untouchable slip through their fingers. What do you think happened next? Did Maya walk away for good, or did she have one more move left to play? Maya didn't wait for their response. She turned, her shoulders straight, walking toward the exit as if she owned the very ground beneath her. The sound of her heels echoed in the stunned silence, louder than the music, louder than the whispers. For the first time all night, the Calloways weren't laughing. They were scrambling, eyes wide, voices low, panic setting in as the reality of what they had just lost sank deep. Outside the ballroom, the air was cool, refreshing, almost cleansing. Maya paused under the glow of the city lights, letting the moment settle. She thought of her mother, who once told her, "Your dignity is worth more than gold." Tonight, Maya had proven it was worth more than $1 billion. Inside, the Calloways' humiliation would spread quickly. The media would soon pick up the story, how a powerful family mocked the very woman who could have secured their future, and paid the price. Their empire would wobble, their arrogance exposed, their name forever tied to their downfall. But for Maya, it wasn't about revenge. It was about respect.
She had shown that no amount of wealth could protect anyone from accountability, that no deal is worth more than self-worth, that racism, even when dressed in tuxedos and diamond necklaces, still destroys from within. Her story would ripple outward, inspiring others who had been dismissed, mocked, or underestimated because of the color of their skin. She had turned humiliation into empowerment, insult into action. And in doing so, she had taken back the narrative that so many tried to write for her. The question is, how many more times will it take before the world understands that dignity cannot be bought, sold, or mocked? What would you have done in Maya's place? Tell us in the comments.